In this weekly Forex forecast for the week ending February 21st, 2025, we are talking about the DXY, the euro, the pound, and the dollar yen. So for the most part, the last few weeks for the Forex market have been very sideways, following all of the indecision out of the US with the tariff talk. So I don't expect that to change too much here. However, we are seeing the DXY start to follow through a little bit to the downside following the breakdown that we talked about back here. So we had a trend line off of these lows going back here to late September, all the way up here to the recent highs. And so what we talked about here was following this breakdown from that September trend line, what I was talking about back here was a sweep of these lows followed by a resumption of this range, right? And that's what we saw here for the past few weeks. Now, last week on Thursday, we did see the DXY follow through a little bit here on a trend line off of this high from right back here on November 22nd. So you can see that we have this high right here. We've got all of these lows in this area. We have this closing price. We have this low here. Thursday closed below. Friday found resistance right there at that level. So far we do have the DXY breaking down a little bit here from a potential local topping pattern that's formed since back here in December. So if this holds up in the week ahead, so if we see the DXY find resistance up here in this area, right around that 107 mark, right around 107.2, then we could see the DXY continue lower down here toward these lows from back here in November and December. Now, one area that I've talked about recently that does come into play here that's very interesting for the DXY is if you go to something like a 3-month chart. So this is essentially a quarterly time frame. Every candle is 1 quarter. You can see that this area through here is very interesting, right around 106 or just below. So we first of all have this high from right back here. We've got this high, this closing price just above. We've got this closing price through here. So there's a lot happening right here around 106. Furthermore, you can see that this is actually a quarterly FVG back here right around 106. So a retest down here for the DXY could be interesting for a bounce. And that's why you see this here on the daily, this area down here that I have marked between 105.70 or so and 106. So these lows right back here, now we could see a little bit below that. Keep that in mind. We could see the market dip below this area and then recover, but I do expect a reaction from this area. So all in all, going into the new week, we do have resistance coming in up here around 107.20 for the DXY and support coming in down here around 106, potentially just below. Keep in mind too, one last thing here, that we also have a trend line off of the October high from back here. So this is the trend line that we talked about when the DXY was breaking out. So this trend line right here could also potentially come into play over the coming days if we were to see a sweep of this low down here. Okay, so something like this come below that quarterly FEG, sweep this low down here, retest that trend line, and then recover back above this area. So this is also a scenario to keep an eye on over the coming weeks if we do get a sweep of this low back here. All right, but all in all, I think that the main takeaway here from the DXY is that we are finally seeing some follow through at the downside following a few weeks of consolidation. And again, resistance up here around 107.20 with support coming in around 106. So next up, we have the EURUSD, which is essentially the inverse of the DXY. So no surprise that we are seeing some follow through late last week on Thursday, climbing above that 1.044 area that we've discussed. So for the most part, you can see that since back here, the EURUSD was essentially range bound. We had range lows down here. We had range highs up here in this area. And this right here was a fake out that we talked about. We had to close back below. This was the short opportunity for the move lower. Now, since that time, again, we did have Thursday and Friday breaking out back above this area. And even though we do have resistance coming in up here around 1.0534 or so coming up in the coming week. So this high right back here, also this high. So this is going to be resistance. However, these are essentially equal highs, meaning that there is liquidity above these highs. So I would love to see the EURUSD come up here, retest this area, pull back a little bit, and then take this out and climb up here toward these highs right around 106.15. Now from there, one area I've talked about for the EURUSD over the past few weeks is this breakdown right back here. And we'll get to this trend line here in a minute. This is actually on the weekly time frame, which is why you see it kind of chopping around here on the daily. But this area right back here, following the breakdown in November, this area is very interesting to me because we do have a fair value gap up here in this area. You can see this was a very aggressive breakdown back here in November, and there was no retest in this area. Okay, so this up here is going to be very interesting for the EURUSD, especially if we do see the DXY move down there just below 106 to retest that October trend line. So essentially what I would like to see here from the EURUSD, it doesn't mean it happens. But following the bounce from this low down here, and keep in mind too that we did have a higher low. So if this holds up, if this area holds up as new support in the week ahead, what I would like to see is the market take out these highs. Okay, equal highs back here, take this out, retest this area, also take out those highs, and then come up here into this area just below 107 before we get some type of pullback. Now, one area that could come into play here on the weekly as well is if you look on the weekly chart, we do have a trend line off of some of these highs from right back here. So notice how going back to the high from July of 2023, you can see that we have this high right here. We've got this high. We've got this high right here. Now notice too on the weekly, the EURUSD tried to break out right here on this candle and it closed back below. So once again, a sign that this was a critical trend line that broke out back here in 2024. Now, this right here technically became a failed breakout because you had the breakout, the market came back down, closed back below, and then notice what happened through here on the weekly, right? It found resistance here. So in my opinion, this is going to be an interesting area up here just below 1.07 because remember, this was that November breakdown, right? This was that November breakdown that we just talked about where we saw no retest up here in this area. Okay, so I do think that this area between 106.15 all the way up toward about 107 is going to be really interesting for a retest here over the coming days and weeks. So all in all, guys, in the short term, I do think if the EURUSD can hold above this area down here, okay, so right around 1.044 up to about 1.0457, okay, this area down here is going to be new support. This is going to be resistance. However, like I said, I would love to see the market come up here, take out these highs, retest 106.15, and then get a push into this area before we get some type of pullback. All right, so structurally, I think that makes a lot of sense. From a liquidity standpoint, that also makes a lot of sense. So we will see if we get that here in the coming weeks. Of course, if the EURUSD were to break back below areas like this on the daily in the coming week, then this up here would be a fake out very similar to this back here, and we could get that push lower. But for now, again, I would like to see the market come up here and take out some of these highs. All right, so next up we have the pound here, which last week, guys, I thought that we were going to get the rotation lower within this descending channel here. Of course, the market had other plans, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. So with the pound breaking above this area around 1.25 on Thursday, you can see where we do have a break of this confluence of what was resistance and now is support. Okay, so this is going to be key support here for the pound in the week ahead. We've got resistance up here at this pivot, so right around 1.2617 or so. So these highs and lows back here, this low, you can see Friday's high. This is going to be resistance up here. We've got support coming in around 1.25. So range bound for now, early in the week. But like the EURUSD though, one area that I do have my eye on for the pound is going to be this area back here. So this is also very interesting in terms of liquidity because what you'll notice is that back here, the pound broke down very aggressively from this critical area, and we got no retest through here following the breakdown. The market tried to come back here toward the level, okay, but fell just short of testing this key area. So in terms of liquidity, what you often get is unfilled liquidity back here in this area because this drop was so aggressive, and it's unfilled because the market never came back toward this area, okay? So that unfilled liquidity could become a magnet for the pound here over the coming days, as long as it can stay constructive and hold above levels like 1.25 and also climb above levels like 1.2617 this week. All right, so this could become a target for the pound up here in this area. You can see that going all the way back here, this is a critical level. Going back here, and even on the weekly, you can see this even better, right? So this up here is going to be your key level. Notice how the weekly didn't quite test that 1.2857 area. So that could become a target for the pound over the coming weeks if we do get a continuation of this breakout. One thing to keep an eye on too is if you'll notice down here off of these lows, there is a trend line off of these lows, okay, so right through here. And one thing that you can do in situations like this too to find local resistance is draw a level off of that upper level, or in this case, this high from right back here. So notice that we have these lows down here, okay, so lows off of this lower level, and then we have this high up here. Now, this has not really been tested yet, okay, so this is a very early stage ascending channel. However, this could come into play as resistance over the coming days. So something to watch here where if we do get the push higher this week, maybe a pullback to start the week into this area, fill this fair value gap down here, and then we get the bounce. But then from there, this area, this level up here is going to be critical regardless of when it's tested, just because of the symmetry that we've seen build off of those lows. Okay, so this is going to be something to watch here over the coming days. But to start the week though, again, I have to stress that so far we have resistance up here around 126.17 and support down there around 1.25. So we could get that pullback first before we get a continuation of the breakout we saw last week. And last up, the dollar yen, guys. This is another one where I was wrong last week. Wasn't the greatest trading week for me, and it does happen. Regardless of how long you've been trading, regardless of how good you are at reading charts and trading the markets, it's going to happen to you where you're going to be wrong in weeks or even a couple of weeks where things aren't going to go your way. And that's just the way it goes with trading. But here, what I was looking for from the dollar yen back here was it looked like we had gotten a fake out. So essentially these lows right back here, I was watching this close and looking for support to build through here on Thursday's candle. Now, of course, as soon as I saw the market moving lower, I knew that this idea was likely to fail. But the point here was we had these lows right back here and we had this close on Wednesday. So it did look like this down here was a fake out to get that push higher, right? And again, the market had other plans and that's okay. That's the way it goes sometimes. But this was also a very small loss for me, right around 0.1%, which really is the name of the game, guys. If you can keep your losses small and let your winners run, that's what it's all about. So with the week ahead, what I'm watching here for the dollar yen is the potential for, first of all, you can see that we do have this ascending channel that's developed off of these highs from back here. So we've got these highs back here across this upper level. Then you've got these two lows down here. Okay, so one thing I'm watching, and it's actually really interesting, where the candle that retested this level here is very similar to this one that we got right back here. Now, what's also similar is that we got the push up initially, we got the pullback, and then we got the higher low. Now, so far, we've had the push up, okay, much more aggressive than what we had back here, but we now have the pullback. So what I'm waiting to see, and this all depends, of course, on things like the DXY and also the Japanese yen, of course, but the question is, do we see a higher low form down here sometime this week? Okay, right around 152, maybe just below, similar to what we had back here. Now, if that happens, then we could see a continuation of this channel, right? For a pushback here toward these highs and potentially even higher. But again, it is going to come down to the DXY and the Japanese yen. So far with the DXY breaking down and the Japanese yen really not giving us a whole lot to work with here so far. I am skeptical of this, but it is something to watch for the week ahead. So if you take a look at the 4-hour time frame, the area that I would say is kind of a must hold for this market is going to be this consolidation right back here. Okay, so specifically, you're looking at this right here for the dollar yen, to where if it were to start to break below here, then I think that this idea is off the table. Okay, so really you need to see this region around 152, maybe just below that, start to serve as support to get that higher low in place. Otherwise, like I said, if we see the market come down here and start testing this low and taking out these lows back here, then the idea is off the table and we could very well get a breakdown from this level. All right. So just something to watch though in the week ahead, this consolidation around 152. I'm in no rush here. I will give this, a day or two to see what we get from the dollar yen to see if we do get that higher low or if the market has other plans. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications. Don't forget to join us in VIP. Claim your 85% off lifetime access. See the link in the description of this video, or if you're on the website, click on that join VIP link. I will see you guys on the inside. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you again this week.